Goblin launch detected.
This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. with free weekly content and free shipping on orders over $150. You can save 5% site-wide by using the promo code MTGMudsta. If you're looking for a direct way to help the channel, please consider joining my Patreon and becoming a member of the generic Goblin Gang. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game finds Jalbel, Dom, and Mathieu back with me, and I've decided to remake my Ramos Mutate deck, keeping Polywog Symbiote, Illuna Apex of Wishes, Sulphur Falls, Reflecting Pool, Riveteer's Charm, Ketria Triome, and Sultai Charm. Jalbel is playing his slightly modified 13th Doctor Who deck, who's partnered with Yasmin. He keeps Wild Growth, Bigger on the Inside, The Flux, Plarg and Nasari, Rockfall Vale, Forest, and Throes of Chaos. Mathieu is playing Ayesha Tanaka Armorer, keeping Steel Shaper's Gift, Hengegate Pathway, Mystic Gate, Sword of War and Peace, the Iron Crag, and Mindstone. Last but not least, Dom is playing Dihada, focusing on legendaries, and he keeps Godless Shrine, Bloodstained Mire, Curse of Opulence, Demonic Tutor, Boros Signet, Rakdos Signet, and Kazakar, the Eye Tyrant. I win the die roll and start us off. I draw and play a tapped Ketria Triome. Jalbel plays a forest and enchants it with Wild Growth and passes. Dom plays a Bloodstained Mire, sacrificing it and losing 1 to find a Savai Triome. Mathieu has a Plains for turn and casts Steel Shaper's Gift. He goes to find a Hammer of Nazan and passes. I play a Sulphur Falls and pay 2 mana for Polywog Symbiote. Jalbel plays a Command Tower and then taps enough to cast the 13th Doctor. He passes once she's out. Dom plays a Rugged Prairie, and then casts Curse of Opulence, cursing Mathieu with it, and passing. Mathieu plays a Mystic Gate, and then plays the Iron Crag, and passes. I've got a Drowned Catacomb for turn, and I then move to combat. I swing the Polywog Symbiote at Mathieu, dealing 1, and getting a gold token from the curse, as does Dom. I then cast Gilrana, and pass turn. Jalbel has a Rockfall Vale, and he moves to combat as well. He swings at Mathieu, getting a gold token, and so does Dom. In Jalbel's second main phase, he cracks the gold token to help cast Plarg and Nasari, and passes. Dom draws and plays a Plains. He casts Boros Signet and then a Rakdos Signet. And once those are out, casts Demonic Tutor and passes while searching. Mathieu draws and plays a Hengegate Pathway, and then pays 2 for a Mindstone. He's able to cast a Heuristic Study after that, and passes back to me. I play a Reflecting Pool and go to combat, and once more attack Mathieu to get a gold token. I then use the gold after combat to help cast Ramos and pass turn, and I get to draw a card from Gillenra and then I pass turn. Plarg and Nasari triggers on Jalbel's upkeep, and he reveals Creative Technique, Dom reveals an Animate Dead, Mathieu reveals Liquid Metal Torque, and I reveal an Esper Charm. Mathieu chooses the Esper Charm to be uncastable, and Jalbel gets to cast the Torque and Creative Technique. He also gets to add a +1/+1 counter to a creature he controls, thanks to the 13th Doctor's first ability. He demonstrates the technique on Mathieu, who gets a Sword of Forge and Frontier, while Jalbel flips into the Time Vortex, which has him cascading. He hits an Elvish Mystic, and then a TARDIS, and then resolves the second technique, hitting a TARDIS, and I should note he's paid 1 for the Heuristic Study each time. Jalbel then draws for turn, and moving to his main phase, plays a Waterlogged Grove. He swings Plarg and Nasari at Dom, and the Doctor at Mathieu. This has him and Dom getting a gold token from the curse, and they both then take their hits. After combat, Jalbel cracks the gold to help cast Talisman of Curiosity, and then moving to his end step, untaps his creatures after having put a bunch of counters onto them thanks to the 13th Doctor's ability. Dom draws and plays a mountain. He then plays Dihada and down takes her to mill 4 cards and make 4 treasures. He then cracks the treasures to cast the one ring, and then activates it to draw a card. After that, he passes. Mathieu's turn is quite quick with a treasure vault, and he then casts his commander, Ayesha EDH, and passes to me. I draw and cast Sultai Charm, destroying Plarg and Asari. Once that's done, I cast Ivy. This has Ramos getting 5 +1/+1 counters, which I then remove to make 10 mana, 2 of each color, and help mutate Illuna onto Ramos. Ivy gets a copy of it as well, and I flip into a Mind Leecher, which I put to hand, and a Seasons of Growth, which I put to field. I then use the remaining mana to mutate a Volcapede onto Ramos, which also goes onto Ivy. And once more, I get Illuna triggers, and I flip into Porcuparrot, which I put to hand, and then a Sawdust Demolisher, which I put to field. Going to combat, I swing Ramos at Jalbel for 9 in the air, and after he takes the hit, I pass. Jalbel draws and plays bigger on the inside, enchanting his Rockfall Veil. He then gets a flavor win by crewing up the TARDIS with the Doctor, and he goes to combat. He swings the TARDIS at Mathieu for 2 and gets a gold token, and this means that his next spell will get to Cascade. After combat, Jalbel uses the gold and bigger on the inside to help cast the Flux, and cascades into an impending Flux ironically. It deals 2 to each of Jalbel's opponents and their creatures, and the second cascade then hits a green slime. The Flux then resolves, dealing 4 damage to the Sawdust Demolisher to finish it off, and after having added some more counters to his creatures thanks to the 13th Doctor's ability, Jalbel then gets to untap his creatures with counters on them as he passes turn. Dom loses 1 to the ring and draws. He then activates the ring, drawing 2 more, and then casts Urza's Ruinous Blast. He exiles all non-legendary permanents, and once that's done, plays out Karazakar, and then upticks Dihada and targets it. He then plays a Windswept Heath as his land for turn, cracks it, and loses 1 to go and find a land. Mathieu draws and then plays a Mox Opal and then an island. He casts a Pure Steel Paladin, and then casts Hammer of Dazan, which he gets to draw a card from. It enters, and he equips it onto Ayesha. Going to combat, he swings his commander at me, which flips into Sword of Feast and Famine and Sword of Light and Shadow. They both come into play, and he gets to automatically equip them onto Ayesha thanks to the hammer, making her hit a total of 8. I then discard a card, and he untaps his lands and gains 3 life as well. In his post-combat main phase, he plays out a Nettle Cyst, and then casts Swords to Plowshares and targets my Ramos stack. I gain some life, and they get exiled, and with nothing else, he passes. I draw but have no land for turn, and just have to pass. Jalbel draws and plays Ominous Cemetery, and then an Arcane Signet. He then casts Yasmin Khan and goes to combat. He swings the Doctor at me to trigger Karazakar, drawing a card and losing 1. He then moves to his end step and gets the 13th Doctor trigger, untapping her and passing. Dom takes 2 from the ring and draws. He activates it to draw 3, and then downticks Dihada, milling 4 and making 4 treasures. He plays a Spectator Seating, and then casts Croaxa, and as it enters, each of his opponents discard a card so we don't take any damage. He follows up with Karlach, and then goes to combat. He swings Karazakar at Jalbel and goads the Doctor, and Jalbel then takes the 5. Dom then untaps Karazakar for the second combat step, and swings it at Mathieu, goading the Germ from the Nettle Cyst and tapping it. Mathieu also takes 5 as well, and Dom then passes. Mathieu has an Ancient Den for turn, and then plays Dream Cache and draws 3, and then puts 2 back on top. He equips the Nettle Cyst to Ayesha, and then swings it at Dom. He gets a Brass Knuckles, and Sword of War and Peace, and Fire Shrieker, putting them all into play, and they all equip onto Ayesha. Dom, however, uses Deflecting Swat to redirect the Sword of War and Peace equip to the Pure Steel Paladin, so he can at least block. Dom then sacrifices his treasures to make Ayesha at least blockable, and chumps with Karlach. After combat, Mathieu then plays an Ornithopter of Paradise, and moves the Sword of War and Peace back onto his commander, and passes. I draw, but still have no lands to play, and a handful of big cards, so I have to pass. Jabel draws, and goes to combat, swinging the Doctor at Mathieu. Mathieu chumps with the Ornithopter, while Jabel and Dom draw a card from the Karazakar trigger. And after combat, Jabel plays a Game Trail, and then moves to his end step, untapping the Doctor with her own ability. Dom loses 3 to the ring, and draws for turn. He then plays a Badlands, and activates the ring to draw 4. He then casts Reanimate, and brings back Archon of Cruelty. He targets Mathieu with a trigger, who loses 3, discards a card, and sacrifices the Pure Steel Paladin, while Dom draws a card and gains 3. Dom then follows up with a Twin Flame and targets the Archon, and has the Token Copy's ability target Mathieu as well. Mathieu sacrifices Ayesha, takes another 3, and discards another card. Dom then upticks Dihada on Karazakar and goes to combat, swinging the Archon copy at Mathieu and Karazakar at Jabel. The Archon trigger goes on Mathieu again, having him lose 3, discard a card, and sacrifice a creature, and then take 6. Jabel has no blocks, but activates Yasmin to exile his top card. Karazakar then connects, and after everyone takes their hits, Dom passes. Mathieu draws and plays Arden. He then moves to combat, and with Arden's trigger, is able to equip himself with everything. He then passes to me after that. It's turn 8 and I still can't draw a land, so I have to pass. Jabel draws and activates Yasmin again, exiling a Sword of Forge and Frontier. He then casts the sword and equips it to the Doctor. Going to combat, Jabel swings the Doctor at me, and I take the hit. This has Jabel exiling the top 2, but hits nothing he can cast, so he moves to his end step, untaps his creatures with counters, and passes. Dom loses 4, draws for turn, and then plays a Dragonskull Summit in his main phase. He plays a Soul Ring, and activates the ring to draw 5. He follows it up by downticking Dihada, milling 4, and getting 4 more treasures. He then casts Duke Ulden Ravengard, but I respond by countering it with a Mana Drain. Dom responds to my counter with Tybalt's Trickery, but I respond to that with a Riveteer's Charm to make him sacrifice the Archon. Tybalt's Trickery then resolves, and he mills me for 2, and I then flip into a Survival of the Fittest. Duke Uller then resolves, and once that's done, Dom uses the Escape ability on Kraxa, and we all discard a non-land card to dodge the 3. Going to combat, Jabel activates Yasmin, and Dom then swings Kraxa and Karazakar at Mathieu, giving Kraxa the Myriad trigger and goading Gildenra. We then each discard 3 cards between Myriad and the attack trigger, and Mathieu blocks Karazakar with Arden, but dies to Kraxa's attack and triggers. After that, Dom casts Heat Shimmer, copying Kraxa, and makes us all discard a card again, and with nothing else, passes turn. I draw and play Hinterland Harbor, and then just pass to Jabel. Jabel draws and activates Yasmin again, and casts the Growth Spiral he exiled. He then goes to combat and swings the Doctor at Dom. Dom takes the hit, with Jabel exiling Dreamroot Cascade and an Explorer. After combat, he plays the Cascade and a Mountain from exile, and then casts Explore to play another mountain. Jabel then passes, and we move to Dom's turn. Dom loses 5 from the ring, and draws, and then activates the ring to draw 6. He plays Loyal Retainers, and sacrifices it to reanimate Morag. Going to combat, Dom gives Kraxa the Myriad trigger again, and Jabel responds by activating Yasmin, and then activating Ominous Cemetery to shuffle Kraxa back into Dom's library. Dom responds by casting Swords to Plowshares and targets the Doctor. He then swings Ulda Ravengard at Jabel. Dom also casts a Boros Charm to give him Double Strike, and Jabel takes 12. In his second main phase, he then plays a Prismatic Vista, and cracks it, and gets another 2 combat steps. Dom then swings Ulda Ravenguard at Jalbel to take him out, and gives Morag the Myriad and Haste trigger, and swings him at me for 7 after sacrificing the extra copy. And since I know that he can swing both of his creatures unimpeded at me for the next combat, I know when I'm beat and scoop it up. Game review time. This game was 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 41 seconds. So this might not have been the best showing for my Ramos deck, especially after I'd shelved it and then brought it back. I had a pretty decent start, but I think a lot of that was thanks to the Curse of Opulence helping me ramp. I definitely need to tweak it a little bit more, maybe add some more ramp spells and or ramp creatures that can also be mutated onto. Jalbel didn't tweak the 13th Doctor all that much, and it was pretty cool to see. He was adding a ton of counters, exiling a bunch of spells, and doing the cool cascade stuff. Some of his attacks were a bit questionable. I think he probably should have focused on Dom a little bit more, but in his defense he was just trying to get all of his opponents down low so that he could probably try and finish them off all at once. Matthew's Ayesha Tanaka Armorer deck was scary once that Hammer of Dazan was out. Her on-attack trigger is very powerful, especially when the equipment that you get to put into play immediately slaps onto your commander. He did get targeted pretty hard once we saw that going, and it makes sense. I think if he was left unhindered, we would have all been dead very easily. Dom's Dihada deck definitely plays a lot more legendaries than mine does. Mine's more focused on spells, whereas his seems to be based around legendary creatures. I will say that I think the all-star of this game probably for him was the One Ring, since it drew him something like 17 to 20 cards, which is just insane for only 4 mana. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.